Hi, everyone. It's MaryAnn from the Blue Room. This is my very first live video, and I'm just waiting right in it. um, I have been thinking a lot, as many of you have, I'm sure, about this phenomenon of Donald Trump's appeal to evangelical Christians. What is that about? A lot of people have had theories about that. Some say that, they kind of follow him reluctantly, but he gives them the policies that they want. So they don't really agree with him as a person and all of the boorish things that he does. But they kind of put up with that because, from a policy perspective, they like what he does. Others say, you know what? Um, we're in such a bifurcated media environment that they don't even see half the crazy stuff that he says. And so that is another theory, right? They don't even see it. They just see the results and the end of Roe v. Wade and all of these things, which they have been pushing for decades. So it works for them, right? Here's a theory that I have not quite heard. I am doing this on a live video because I have a book to write and I don't have time to write this up. And I really would love your thoughts on this. Um, Last week, this has just been on my the monkey on my back for several days, so I'm getting it out now. Last week, I read and listened to a column podcast from Ezra Klein, who was talking about Trump's psychology, his personality, and he sets aside a lot of the stuff that people have theorized about whether he's a malignant narcissist and all of this kind of stuff. I mean, that's part of it, but he sort of sets that aside, and he looks at there are 5 aspects of personality, things like conscientiousness, neuroticism, extroversion. And what he argues that I think makes a lot of sense is that Trump is fundamentally a very disinhibited person. And what he means by that is Trump does exactly what Trump wants. He says what he wants. He does what he wants. We have seen countless examples of that. You just kiss. I don't even ask. I just kiss. Remember that from the Access Hollywood video. And that has been a strength for him, right? He is not inhibited by what normal politicians are inhibited by, wanting to say the right thing, have a good soundbite. He just comes out and says it. And that's a positive for many people. I mean, a lot of people hate politics. They want you just to say what you mean, right? Instead of just kind of trying to give you this finessed, answer. He just comes out with it. And that's very refreshing for people. Ezra Klein played a clip of him coming out against the Iraq War, which was, and it was very forceful. It was very refreshing at the time for people who were against that war. But our positives can also be our shadow sides, right? And so the very things that get him in trouble are that lack of inhibition, right? The things that he says, the things that he does show a complete lack of kind of guardrails that many people put up. And I think that's part of his appeal to certain people, right? He says the things that we'd like to say, right? And so when, Ezra Klein kind of pushes this argument further and says, look, people who are assessing whether to vote for him again are like, well, the last term wasn't that bad. He didn't do all these terrible things that people are saying he's going to do this time. Well, the reason for that is because he had inhibitors. He had people with him who would kind of keep him within the guardrails of um, somewhat of normalcy. And without those in place this time, the disinhibition of Trump is going to be completely on display. We're going to see it all come out. And so that's Ezra Klein's argument. Here's my piece. I am trying to make some connections here with evangelical and conservative Christianity. Hop over with me to some theology as we think about what we call the uses of the law, right? So in theology, Calvin and Martin Luther talked about what the law is for. Why do we have the Ten Commandments, the kind of law in the Old Testament? And part of it is to restrain ourselves, right? The purpose of the law is to hold up a mirror and say, look, we are called to be a certain way. And we're not able to do that because we are fundamentally flawed, sinful people. We can't achieve that kind of law, the perfection of that. And so what we need is we need a kind of daddy God to kind of keep us in line. We need a restraint, a kind of set of a sort of rule based religion that kind of says this is sinful, this is not sinful, and kind of has these you're in or you're out sort of things. It's a very patriarchal kind of view of things. Um, if you are so if you are in that conservative flavor of Christianity, that's the view of things that you're kind of a part of, right? This idea that we are fundamentally flawed, we're fundamentally sinful, so we need religion to kind of tell us how to behave. So conservative Christianity kind of comes from that strain. So why do they love Trump so much? Here is my theory. I wonder, this is my wondering, and you can kind of push back on this. I wonder if the people who resonate with a more conservative Christianity are also, like Trump, on the less inhibited scale of personality. Like there are things they really want to do, there are things they wish they could do, but they know they can't, they shouldn't, it's societally not good, or the religion says not to. And so they need those guardrails. They need that religion to come in and say, it's wrong to be gay. It's good to have the husband as the head of the family, like these very clear roles. And so they need that if they're on that less inhibited scale, they need someone to inhibit them. So why do they love Trump, who's so uninhibited? I think, and I wonder if Trump's lack of inhibition scratches that itch, right? It that part of their psyche that wishes they could do that, but knows they shouldn't. So it's almost like a guilty pleasure, like they love Trump for saying and doing these outlandish things that they wish they could do, but they know they shouldn't because they are um, in this kind of restrictive, you know, rule oriented, law based, you're fundamentally flawed, so let's help you stay in line. There's a classic old quote from Penn the comedian and magician, who is an avowed atheist, and he says, I think in one of his books, he said, people who are religious will ask me sometimes, um, if you don't have God as a basis for your morality, what is to stop you from raping all you want? What is to stop you from killing people, murdering all you want? And Penn says, I do rape all I want. The amount that I want to rape is zero. And I murder all I want. The amount that I want to murder is zero, right? Um, and I think that view of things is that we need God in order to keep us in line makes sense to a certain kind of personality that is different on that inhibition scale than some of us who are looking from another perspective. I mean, I'm way off the charts conscientious side of things. Like, I can't imagine what the appeal is. And I have to tell you that thinking about this has helped me look upon people who do resonate with his leadership with a lot more compassion. That doesn't mean that I agree with where they end up, and it doesn't mean that we shouldn't do everything we can to advocate for a different way of being. In my opinion, and this is just my opinion. I'm out on a limb here a little bit. I'm a pastor, right? And we're 4 days before an election. But that helps me frame and have some compassion for why that might be. I mean, I think about people who are in recovery, right? When you are trying to get sober, you need to go to a meeting every day for 90 days. And that's very restrictive. And part of that is to try to tame the disinhibition, right, of wanting to go drink or wanting to go use. And so it makes sense for a certain kind of personality or situation. Um, but I have been thinking a lot about that idea of the law restraining us, and it's also connected to the idea of original sin and the idea that we are fundamentally flawed at our core. When Adam and Eve ate that fruit, that was it. We are fundamentally separated from God, and we cannot get reintegrated, reconnected with God except through Jesus, right? And I am wondering more and more whether we need to take a really hard look at that doctrine and whether it has outlived its usefulness for us. I'm just going to, come out and be bold in that way, because I think theologians, but also people who work in psychology, like Brene Brown. I mean, she has helped us see that a shame-based, we are bad down to our core, is not the way that we change. I'm going to pivot a little bit from Trump into something else. So if you're here for the Trump content, I'm not going to talk too much about him anymore. But this idea of what could we replace it with? And what I'm thinking a lot about in studying other strains of Christianity, including Celtic Christianity, is this idea that not that we are flawed down to our core, but there is a divine within us that cannot be taken away. And part of our journey towards transformation is getting back in touch with that, our true essence, our the divine within, whatever you want to call that. And that is what allows us to change. That is what gives us the motivation to change. And I'm going to give you an example of this. And this is the last little bit. So if you are interested in the show Shrinking, it's in season 2. I'm about to spoil a little bit of season 2, but I won't say who the characters are. But it's a beautiful scene from episode 3. There's a character in that show who, at the end of season 1, did something awful, and she gets arrested for it. And there are 2 people in the show who are trying to help her. And she refuses their help. She's in jail. They come to visit her. Every time she comes, I mean, her face is just blank. She's like, I did a terrible thing and I deserve to be condemned. I deserve to go to jail. I deserve the death penalty, whatever they're going to give me. She is in a shame spiral, right? And it's a lot of that. I think that in stuff that we internalize about kind of shame-based, we are just bad, right? We are bad down to our core. And that's the way she's feeling. And they're trying all these things to help her. Well, some things happen and she gets released from jail, and the charges get dropped. But she still won't forgive herself. She still holds on to, I am bad. I don't deserve anything good to happen to me. And so what happens is these 2 people that have been trying to help her, one is kind of trying to buck her up and be like, come on, you can do this, make a change your life, get out of this kind of bad destructive pattern that you're in. And she refuses. And then the other person comes into the room, and what he has with him is they've been collecting, in case there was going to be a trial, character witnesses for her, all of her friends and loved ones. And he starts reading them to her. Here are the things that they said about you. I'm getting goosebumps. The kindness that you showed to them, the way that you went the extra mile, your compassion, your love, your humor, right? He reflects back to her who she truly is. And that is finally the thing that allows her to make that change and forgive herself and heal, reconcile, all of that. I mean, it's not an easy process, but the last scene, you see her, she's taken the step toward forgiveness of herself and something new. And so this is all a lot of big stuff. And I'm pulling a lot of things together. And again, I would love to know what people think about this. But the idea that we are just awful people that need to be inhibited, need to be restrained, leads to all sorts of awful outcomes. I mean, this is why you have the most virulent homophobes turn out to be the ones who have that tendency in themselves. It's a self-loathing, and this has all kinds of just really, really negative effects. And we're seeing it infect our politics too. And so I wonder what would it would be like to kind of, I mean, this is a huge societal-wide project and a church-wide project, right, for Christianity to kind of disentangle ourselves from this idea of bad all the way down. But what would happen and what would the world look like if we could? And so that's where I leave all of this, and I leave it all with you. Thank you all for joining my very first live video. I feel like I've gotten the monkey off my back now and talked about this that's been on my heart for a while so that I can go back to the book that I'm writing. But again, thank you. And yeah, I really appreciate your accompaniment in this, and we will see you next time. Have a wonderful day, everyone.